Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy Duncan. It is Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. And if it is Wednesday night at 8 p.m., it is Black Men Speak.
That
Welcome,
is
everyone.
correct. The most informative and progressive talk show on the internet. So, and we're not here to entertain. We're not here for play. We're here for serious business. So let's give a big shout out, Tom, to our to Liquid for providing our theme music. And I see that we have a very special guest tonight. Man, I'm
Yep,
going to tell you, Tom, you have been hitting home run after home run, week after week, with finding these talented brothers to come on and share their knowledge and wisdom. And it looks like tonight is another Grand Slam home run.
absolutely, folks. So, we were asked some weeks ago when we had a special show dealing with young men, young black men, and talk. We started out, Jimmy, talking about, and it's probably been over a month ago, about tips that we provide to parents, young people in terms of really how to develop yourself as a young man.
Yes.
And as we went through some more of the shows, we got some requests from some parents saying, hey, why don't you guys spend a little bit more time dealing with our young people on maybe a scheduled basis, things that are important, in growing up as a young black man, since you are two adult black men, and then also things not just that young people need to know to grow up in order to be successful, but even also providing some guidance to parents who are raising these young men, so that we can set them up for success. And so we do have a very special guest in the house tonight, and we're definitely happy to have him. We're going to have him introduce himself very briefly, but our show for tonight is going to focus on how to develop young black men. That is, how to develop young black men for excellence, independence, and empowerment. We hear all of the bad statistics about what's happening
Yes.
with young black men in terms of graduation rates. Obviously, we've been dealing for two
Incarceration,
decades with
employment,
the
yes.
absolutely employment, incarceration, those types of things. But what they don't show, quite frankly, are a lot of the success stories and what our young men and what their parents are doing and what our community is doing to strengthen them, lift them up, to really groom them to be successful in life. So we want to talk a little bit about that tonight. And as a result, I have a very good friend of mine who I've known for some years, who is a principal, at a college prep school in the Houston area. We're going to have Brother Robertson to introduce himself very briefly, where he's from and kind of what he does. And we're going to let it fly. But before we do get started with the conversation, as always, we are expecting some folks to call in tonight, because every time
Yes.
we talk about this topic, we have some folks to call in. That number is 972-497-2280. Well, wait a minute, Jimmy. I see another number in here. So there is a dial-in number with a pin in the chat group.
Correct. Make sure you give
Uh,
the pin out because both numbers go to the same place. So they will
Absolutely.
both numbers will conference you in to our conference bridge. And one other thing before Brother Robinson introduce himself, this is not someone standing on the sideline observing and taking notes. This is a brother that's in the trenches. So people, y'all need to once again listen up. This is a brother who knows what he's talking about.
All right, Brother Robertson, why don't you introduce yourself very quickly, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the conversation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Robertson. I am a principal down at KIPP Northeast College Prep High School in Houston, Texas. I'm entering now my second decade. Year 11 counts as entering my second decade in education. And I've worked in schools ranging from middle schools all the way up to the college level. And so I've seen young people develop from ages uh, 12 up to 22, 24. 25 if you're in the traditional and non-traditional college realm. So I've enjoyed watching students develop and have seen a bit of what they need to be successful in life.
Absolutely. Good deal. We appreciate that introduction. And, one of the things we've talked about, Jimmy, on a regular basis is that, our young boys from the Black community, when they start in the early formative years in school, first through fourth grade or so, they excel. They
Right.
are just as strong academically, if not better, than their peers, male and female for that matter. But for some reason, something happens after that fourth and fifth grade to some of them, and their academic achievement, for whatever reason, multiple reasons, some of which we will talk about tonight, begins to slack off. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about, what we must do to continue to develop and groom and grow our young men so that they can achieve excellence, so they can achieve personal independence and empowerment. So I'm going to start by asking, since Brother Robertson, I know you have worked with young folks of all age, what are the things that you've seen being a teacher, being an administrator, being a leader in the academic environments with our young men in particular? And is there any truth to this? After the fourth or fifth grade, something happens with our young men.
I actually think some of the things happen a little bit before then. When we look at the achievement and opportunity gaps for students, a lot of it stems at the years where certain things matters the most. And so let's say we have a lot of students in the African American community who are not going directly into a pre-K 3 program, a pre-K 4 program. Preschool is vital in developing the social skills, the developmental skills, the motor skills, and those early stages of reading and literacy for our kids. And so if our students are beginning that process at a later age, instead of, let's say for my son, started in pre-K 3, he's reading at a third grade level, though he's in the first grade. He's also speaking Spanish. He was exposed to things a little bit earlier, but I've also had young people in my own family who didn't go to preschool, really didn't go to school until it was kindergarten time. They stayed with Big Mama or our auntie or our cousin that could watch the kids. And a lot of it is because of income and finances. Daycare is high. I know that personally. And so our kids are not going into preschool soon enough to start getting the developmental, social, coping skills, as well as the vital literacy skills that you need. As you advance in those later elementary years, and especially in the middle school, that's when you start seeing these standardized tests come to play. It's easy to move on and seem successful in first or second grade. But when you start throwing in the state standardized tests, that's where the data is coming from. And that's where the data is showing, well, by the third grade, if you're not reading on this level, this is where you're going to go. And so those middle years, that's when you start to see some of these things come into play. For me, it was the case. I remember vividly asking my mom when I was in the fifth grade if I could have hooked on phonics. I said, Mom, I knew my reading wasn't where I needed to be. I knew my comprehension wasn't quite where I needed it to be. And so I asked for it. She denied it. And so I had to work a little bit harder to get it done. But that's where I'm starting to see some things. And when you see kids, when I worked at the middle school, the main struggle, our students were not reading on the grade level. So when they go on to,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was going to ask you, there's a professor, we read his book, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago in our book club, Losing the Race. Are you familiar with it?
No.
John McWhorton, I think is his name. McWooden, I think is his name. And he basically went around the country interviewing teachers and parents and students, asking students, for instance, what's the lowest grade that you can bring home, and track the data, talking to educators. And what he concluded in his book was that young black boys outperform and do really well in first and second grade. But then as you start getting towards sixth and seventh grade, teachers sort of view them differently. And I think you hit on one of it with the standardized test, that if you don't perform well enough, you're already being slotted at that point. And that has to shape your expectation of the students. But he points out that a lot of teachers, when you speak honestly, would have very low expectations for black boys to perform. The parents would allow them to bring home C's and D's, where other kids had to bring home higher grades. Asian and white Jews had to bring home A's. Black girls could get away with bringing home a B minus or a C, but black boys said they could bring home D's and F's, and that would be acceptable. And it seemed like the teachers had that same kind of attitude. By the time they got to the sixth grade, they're not cute and cuddly anymore. These are pre-criminals, pre-thugs at this point. I'm worried if you're going to bring a gun to the school and shoot me. So can you talk a little bit about how these kids or young black boys are being slotted early on, and how that could really shape the rest of their academic career?
Well, it's one of those things that if you start looking or feeling inadequate, you start to slide to the back of the room.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be noticed less. If I feel like my teacher is going to aggressively monitor and randomly select students to answer a question, I don't want my name to be called, because I don't want to appear that I don't know what I'm talking about, because if I open my mouth, I know I don't have this answer. I don't want that teacher to ask me to read and be shamed in front of my peers. And so our students start to slide to the back of the room at this early stage. Many will do just enough to get by, or try to build some type of relationship with the teacher to where, you know what, we're going to keep you moving. And so being slighted, it has these lasting effects on our kids that is truly detrimental for them. But it goes into that, well, you see two sides. One, I don't want to answer this question because being the nerd isn't cool, but
Right,
on the
that's
same
true.
time, I don't want to answer this question because I don't know it. And so you try to play in this middle ground. Man, I know that, but I ain't for to answer it. The teacher can't get me to respond. So you don't know what you don't know. And I always say we don't know what the students don't show. And so sometimes it's
Right.
hard to truly assess where they are.
Let me ask you this: what, if any, makes this difference? So, first thing I heard was the importance of pre-K education, and I do now remember being in a pre-K school. I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, but my parents actually put me in a pre-kindergarten school for a couple of years before going into a traditional school. And, what I didn't know that I thought that was interesting, you just said, is that, maybe through the first or second or so grade, you're doing fine. But once you get, into those later years of grammar school, then you have standardized tests and other things that end up catching up with you. And there are two parts of this question. What is it that you're getting in pre-K such that you're okay in first and second grade, maybe third, but once you get into those later grammar school years, all of a sudden you find yourself unprepared, underprepared, feeling not so confident about your ability to perform?
I think it's really what you are looking at. And sometimes, I put it like this, you've seen students get held back in middle school. You've seen kids get held back in high school. You don't have enough credits to make it to the next level. We don't always see that these days at the elementary level. And so due to a lot of different factors, many students are, I don't want to say moved along, but they keep on matriculating.
Is that what they call social promotion per se?
In many cases, it is that. In many cases, some parents do not want to feel as though their student is not inadequate. It's the teacher's fault. Y'all not going to hold my child back. You are not going to hold my child back because y'all didn't do something right. And so instead of keeping that student in the place where they probably need to be
Until they master the work.
until they master it, we're going to push them along, and the next teacher just has to work twice as hard. And some teachers can close those gaps, but in many cases, what we're seeing now is there are a lot of educators that are entering the profession who are not equipped with the pedagogical skill to reach the students where they are and to take them to the next level. I've seen, and myself in 2010, I was a teacher that came by an alternative certification program. But I knew I wanted to teach before then. I just didn't want to do it the way I would have in college because I wasn't going to get paid for my internship. I was smart. And so I did the alternative certification, but I remember sitting in this room with some people. I'm like, you don't need to be in front of anybody's kids. This pandemic didn't help. I need a job. I got laid off here. And I see it often when we post a position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at in resumes and even in KIP, we're a public charter. So we're a public school just under the charter network. And in some positions in charters, you don't have to be certified. You don't have to hold a certification for that classroom position. Though for my campus, I've really tried to prioritize that because I worked in 4 traditional districts. But when I look at some of the resumes that have come across my desk, and even talking with recruitment team members all across Houston, you're getting some resumes that it went from I worked from this fast food joint. I then worked at Lowe's or Home Depot for a semester or 2, and now I'm the assistant car washing manager for this car rental place. But I want to teach high school physics. I want to teach. And if you maybe you have the skill and you're paying putting your way through college, I can respect that. But if you think the way in is just I'm gonna get a job making $57,000 out the gate to stand in front of other kids, other people's children, that's the wrong mindset that we have in front of our kids. And if you've seen, our schools have shortages. And it's not just one district,
Massive.
statewide, across the country. We have shortages, which means it's some people that are slipping in, and the wrong individuals are slipping into the school system, doing the wrong things for our kids, and our kids are continuously slipping further and further behind.
So there's. Go ahead, Jimmy. Then
I was going to ask, what do we have to do to make being smart, being a nerd, cool again? I don't know if it ever was, but it seems like there's far too much pride in what you don't know and ignorance, and not making the good grades as opposed to. And then let me ask you this: also being in the trenches there with the kids, do black kids still suffer with this having this tag placed on them of wanting to be white simply because they make good grades?
And if I could add to that, and I'll add some perspective as well, is in a lot of cases, our young men being academically high achievers isn't socially promoted in our communities. Unfortunately, what we see too many times is the kid, well, my kid is going to be the next Kobe Bryant, and now my kid is going to be the next MJ. My kid is going to be, I'll use contemporary, going to be the next Lamar Jackson. Nothing wrong with that, but the chances are so infinitesimally small that they're going to be able to make a career out of that. And even those who do are only in either league, that is NBA basketball or NFL football, for maybe 4 years, and they chase that dream, but you have to have a career afterwards. But stepping back, unfortunately, a lot of our parents and a lot of folks within our community, not to even lose mass media that does not make being intelligent, a high achiever, something that is celebrated.
Right.
And so I'm asking that in context to Jimmy's question in terms of what you do, because the overwhelming content that you see on mass media, that you see within, some of our households, is that, it's the cool stuff, being the great athlete or being a rapper. You ask most kids, in classes over the last decade, what do they want to do? I want to be a rapper. I want to be an athlete. That's the challenge that I'm hearing with Jimmy's question, because it's like they're being bombarded with all these other images. You shouldn't focus on making straight A's. You should focus on being a great athlete or an entertainer. And in some cases, obviously they have parents that are a little bit more balanced and can see the future. So I apologize for adding so much, but I felt it appropriate to add that as well.
On the first piece about being a nerd or being smart cool again, but where I have found some successes is truly celebrating the wins, celebrating the students. Man, you aced that test, and sometimes it's celebrating it. Dog, really? You've made 100. Come on, and you're on the kids like the gram. The
They do.
kids like TikTok, and we find a way to highlight them their way. It goes back to, I remember when I used to coach, I used to write up the announcements for the front office the day after. And I was a communication major, and I used to announce high school football games, and I was the PA announcer at Lamar University. And so I would type up the announcements as if it was a script. And the kids read it one day, and I'm like, no, they're not doing it right. So I had to go and do the announcements, and you would have thought it was John Madden out there, play by play. And so the kids start hearing their name on the announcements. 300 yards for this student. This fella broke the field wide open, a long streak down the field, 87-yard catch by Jalen Hughes. And they're sitting here like, man, Mr. Robertson going hard on the announcement. So then kids start coming up to me. Mr. Robertson, what do I have to do to get my name on the announcements? So the basketball players wanted the same play that the football players was doing. Well, son, if you don't get off the bench too much, but if you can get 12 points in the 20 minutes you're going to be out there, at least 8 rebounds and 3 assists, you got it. Kids went out and balled out because they knew they were going to get highlighted in front of their friends. And just having my name called is one thing, but having it sound cool. So I have to match the coolness of you being smart with the coolness of what I'm going to do to intentionally highlight and celebrate you. And then say, guys, I need y'all to be like him. This dude right here, and I tell him, you're the smartest one out of the whole bunch. You're the smartest one out of this crew. I need you to bring them along. I need them to be where you're at. And so not only is it now cool to them, but they see that grown folks, that this big black man look at this young black man and say, you are a leader. And I need the people that's following you to follow you for the right things. It's right in you. You're showing it. So I know you know it. That's the key. Finding a way to truly celebrate them, empowering them, patting them on their back, being their champion. Every child needs a champion. That other piece of, I don't hear as much. And it's funny, I made a statement this morning because I was trying to share with my supervisor how my son talks, my 6-year-old. And I said, well, I said, I don't like to use the term he speaks proper, because talking about the way that a young black boy speaks and then to say he talks proper, I feel like it goes into that the being white or talking white that I used to hear when I was in school. I said, my son speaks in perfect English. He sounds out each word. He speaks in complete sentences. He does very well, and you wouldn't believe that every school that he's been in, no matter where we've stayed, has been in an inner city school. This first school, where he learned dual language, he was one of 6 kids in a school that was 99% Hispanic. The next school, it was 99% black, truly inner city, right in the hood. But he found a way to be successful. And my wife, she wanted to keep moving him to a school on the better side, or a school that had these waiting lists. And why are we keeping him here and not going to the school where there's this long waiting list? I'm tired of seeing schools take the best and they're left with the rest. And not saying the rest or anything like that, but our schools, especially inner city schools, for years, the best, the highest achieving, the highest scores are taking out and going into this more prosperous area where they were oversaturated already. And so you're left with the rest of the students who are struggling, are students who are emergent bilinguals, are students with IEPs. We're left now struggling because the students that were going to help balance it out and keep us above water are now gone. And so that piece is interesting, but to answer the question, I don't hear as much about the being white because in some of the schools I've been at, the white population is less than 5%. My school that I'm the principal of is 65% Hispanic, 35% African American. And I actually had an incident where a student almost got into a confrontation because someone said, "You're white." And I said, well, that's not the case at this school. I never knew we had it. So we don't see that in all places. But one of the things you're speaking about it reminded me, how often have you guys been to a Little League football game or AAU basketball game? And
Many years.
Never.
being a coach, I remember being
I
there,
used
and
to
you got
coach Little
to
League. That was fifth football, but that was probably 30 years ago.
likewise. It used to be so interesting being out, even when I was coaching high school, being out on the field, and the parents are coaching for you. The parents are calling their students' names who are out on
Yes.
the field and telling them what to run. I'm calling the plays, ma'am. Give me an opportunity to finish my plays. I've seen parents more invested in what their child is doing out on that field
Yes. Then they do in the classroom.
than in the classroom. I've seen kids more swagged out, 12 years olds, 9 year olds, 7 year olds. My nephew is one of them. He's playing in one of the little league, all the swag. I mean, he got wraps on his arms, wrists, elbows, sweatbands, and he hell of an athlete. But our parents buying those school supplies at the same rate that you're buying the fresh Jordan cleats and making sure that they have the arm wraps and the sun visor. Are you spending the same resources?
No. Yeah, because
And, and,
thousands go into that sports gear.
sometimes I've seen where fathers, I'm going to make sure my son is fresh. Are you taking care of what you need to for your son inside of these schools? Don't and I remember as a young man, my relationship with my own father strengthened because of sports. I played football because that was my dad's love, and then it became my love, and so that's where we got a bond when I was a adolescent. But are you paying that same attention to what your son is doing inside of the classroom? And in many cases, it's not. And if it is, it's I just need you to do enough so that you're out there on that football field. I'm gonna be out there on Friday night, but were you there at the PTO night? Were you there
Right.
at report card night? Were you there when we did the open house? In many cases, we're not seeing families there. As I mentioned, sometimes it's hard to get a hold of families. But when something goes wrong, and I told the family this week, I said, y'all pulled up. It's 7 of you, and in 32 minutes, y'all
Look
pulled
like a
up on me.
drive-by.
So it's some interesting things that we see, but you can kind of imagine what we see when you look at the AAU. When you look at some of these games where we can pack the stands on a Thursday or Friday night, Tuesday nights for middle schools, but when the school are doing what they need, many times we have more staff members staying late than we have of students and family members coming to check in on their progress, and sometimes that can be very discouraging.
So let me ask this question. And by the way, for those who are listening, if you'd like to call in, please do so. 972-497-2280. Ask any question that you'd ask.
Provide the pin also,
972-497.
Tom.
972-497-2280. We also have another number here, 1-484-841-4618, and the PIN is 664-356-176. I am going to repeat that, 1-484-841-4618. The PIN number is 664-356-176. I remember seeing, I was out of town, and I traveled quite a bit on the job, and I was at a hotel, and I remember seeing this large cluster of kids, and they were out, and they were hanging out in the lobby, and they were, talking about something intensely. And I asked one of probably one of the mentors of the group, hey, what do you guys have going on? And they had a robotics competition. This was in Houston years ago. They were having this big robotics competition, and they were going into some stadium. And I mean, these kids were excited. I don't know how many years they have been doing it, these competitions, but they had this big robotics competition. I remember it was someplace in Houston, and I mean, these kids were excited about it. And it was almost as if they were competing for, like a basketball tournament, things of that nature. Brother Robertson, have you seen anything going on in our schools, or do you see things that some of our kids are getting engaged with that is providing the type of energy that is really developing these young kids to get excited about their technical skills, their academic skills? And I'm really asking this on behalf of parents. Whether their school may have it or not is one thing, but we've talked about this in prior shows. There is still power in PTA. There is still power
Yes.
in parent involvement. And you don't get what you don't ask for. But when we talk about the energy, the time, and the money that goes into the athletics, which is one realm, of achievement, when you talk about the academic performance, it has a significantly longer line of return on investment in terms of your life.
So what you're talking about, and I love the piece of the power of PTO. As a principal, if a parent, really if a student come to me with a proposal or an idea, I listen to it and I always end it with, what do you need from me? We had a group of students that came and did a full presentation on the Hispanic Heritage Month, and they had an event for every day, and it probably cost about $6,000 to $7,000. What do you need from me? Well, the $6,000 or $7,000, and I took care of it. I said, send me the list, send me the invoice, send me the Amazon, whatever you need, send it to me. And we took care of it, and our students feel very well supported for this past month. When you mentioned the robotics piece, it's kind of a twofold. Some schools actually have the funding under CTE, Career and Technical Education. They have the funding for a lot of those robotic STEM activities. Sometimes they do not have the sponsor or the educators to match.
Gotcha.
So we have the resources. Do we have the adult that want to lead that program? And sometimes you have the adult that would lead it. However, the school doesn't have the interest, the funding. Sometimes school leaders are not always in favor of certain programs. I've been around people, it's straight academics, it's only AP courses and state tests. I don't care about athletics. I don't care about the extracurriculars. Me, I look at the fact that we have to reach the whole child.
All right.
And so there are programs on campuses that will benefit students. Us that have been around a little while, you see the high schools that used to have the wood shop and used to have the auto tech. Many schools still have, some schools still have cosmetology. It's a school in Houston that I saw they actually have not only the cosmetology for students, but also learn to be a barber. You can be a licensed barber by the time you graduate. And I think it's important to push options for students early. Because I'll tell my students, I'll tell a group of seniors and freshmen, whoever, college isn't for everybody. Of course, I want you to try it if you can afford it, if that is something that you feel is best for you and your family. But in our school's mission, there's this one line that talks about allowing students to pursue avenues of their choice. And every time we read the mission, I stop and I say, somebody say it again, their choice. College for everybody might be my choice or the next person's choice. Careers may be the choice for many of us, but the children, we're going to equip them with opportunities, the resources to make their choice on what's next for them. And so where I've seen some gaps, some of these programs are coming in a little bit later. If you really want to get some students tapped into STEM fields and robotics and a lot of things of that science or math, we got to start at the middle school. We have to get it tied into at that middle school level because it's an educational component that kind of comes with it. And so if we know that our kids are not learning at the rate or grade level that they need to in the middle schools, by the time they get to the high school, these activities are over my head. I can't do computer coding because I didn't learn what I needed at the middle school level. However, if I was exposed earlier, we've seen our kids be much more successful and carry on with that trait.
So when you have a parent who maybe finds out that their child isn't prepared, maybe they didn't have that pre-K education. I think, Head Start was a very popular program back in the day. I don't know if that's still around. Or maybe for whatever reason, their school did not, for whatever reason, prepare their child to be either ahead of the curve or at least within the ballpark when it comes to some of these We talk about the STEM subjects and all of those types of things, or just really even the fundamental. Because now we talk about, and I saw this 15 some odd years ago, the writing on the wall, when I was working tutoring kids in math and science, and I'm working with 10th graders who don't even know timetables. And I remember we did that in grammar school. What do we? What do the parents do? Where do they go? How do they help get that additional support when they find out that their child is behind? And for young Black men, for whatever reason, they probably have the least support because of the social stigma that you mentioned a little bit earlier. Being smart isn't cool, or they might get picked on, they might get bullied, because of the kid who, quite frankly, isn't achieving, and he's bullying the kids that's smart. Because at the end of the day, maybe they ain't feeling somebody being smarter than them and don't want to show them out. What can parents do? What should parents do? What resources are there? What should they be thinking about
The
now?
belt, Tom. That's the best resource there is.
I understand, but that's not
Get the
gonna make.
belt back out and sit down at that table with your homework and the book. And the two
It,
of us are going to get through this. And we're not leaving this table unless the work is done or the belt is swinging. So that's the way it works. I
All
wish
right.
we go back to those days.
you're going to look at the options of both in school and out of school. Out of school, looking at different tutorials, tutoring services. For some families, the one-on-one help is vital. Sometimes you may be able to partner with friends and neighbors or family members and say, hey, let's get three of them together and try to move them along together. Within our schools, that's things that we're looking at right now because of the pandemic. What is the accelerated learning that is needed? In the past, we always talked about interventions, but what accelerated learning is what we need to close those achievement gaps. I've found ways in the past to make learning over time cool by tying it to activities that students like. It may be, hey guys, we got open gym after school, but we got study hall before it. Well, kids want to shoot the hoops and they know they have to come to study hall for a period of time. Well, now that we have that opportunity to go to study hall, I'm fit to put the right people in that room. So it might be the math teacher, bring a science teacher that knows much of the content that can help any students. We found ways to be successful by getting them in smaller groups with peers that we're all struggling, but we're trying to grow and go together, move forward together. And so tying in activities like that. In my own gym, I have at the school, we have a room that was designed to be a conference room. I don't know if it was designed to be a conference room. It's just the operations team made it a conference room. And I looked at it and I said, that would be a great weight room, but it has a conference table and a TV in it. And I said, I need that to go. And so last month I purchased all the equipment. We were waiting on the mats to come in, and some students who have caused some trouble and gotten into some trouble at different parts of the year. They were passing by because they were in a PE class, and they said, "Mister, what you doing?" I said, "I'm putting the mats down." They said, "We'll help." Well, 4 kids came in and they laid all the mats down, so now we can build the equipment. And he said, "So we're going to have a weight room. Can I come and work out?" I said, "There's some things you got to do before
To earn the right to
getting
get
in
there.
here." I said, "What your grades look like?" So we have to be passing everything to work out. Man, I'm trying to get strong. So if I get a 70 in everything, I can work out. I'd love more than the 70, but we can start there. Bet. And so now learning is cool again because they see something that they see this carrot. And for some people, a weight room is making kids increase learning or closing those gaps. But everybody has something that is that we can incentivize each other with,
Right.
and for them, it's that. And it goes back to the parents. We're going to ask the question: what are you doing right now? Schools have ESSER funds by the government. If your students are struggling, you should go to that school and say, "What are you doing with the funds that was provided by the government to close these gaps?" Many districts and many schools are getting increased intervention positions. I think I'm actually allocated probably 5 or 6 people that I can hire to help lead small groups with students to get them caught up and get them back to the level that they should be at to be successful. And so I would really start there. Look at outside organizations and groups that can help you close the gaps. Look at what the schools currently are doing. Propose some solutions if you must, but also ask what are schools doing specifically with the funds that have been released to them recently as it relates to the ESSER funds.
Let me ask you this. Is this related? And you mentioned something earlier, and I'm wondering, I don't know if there's a dot between what you just said and what you mentioned earlier about the COVID pandemic, schools closing. I've talked to, some young people, college primarily, who quite frankly said, I feel like I've lost a year of school. I'm struggling. I'm not exactly sure what to do about it.
In the
So
house arrest, Tom.
exactly. So if we look at high school, if we look at college now, and quite frankly, a lot of our teachers, we're struggling with the whole delivery, depending on where you are, what district you're in, the resources that were available to them in order to deliver education online. Quite frankly, you look at the distractions in some of the households, the ability or inability of students to stay focused when they're looking at a screen and not in a classroom, which is going to be a little bit more of a controlled environment. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen. Are there actually resources out there to help get their kids caught up if they have fallen behind because of the last year? And what else do some of our young people or some of our parents need to know? Because quite frankly, with our young Black men in particular, there is this stigma, and it's reinforced by social media, and to a certain degree it sometimes can be reinforced by our community, that you excel athletically and professionally. If you just pass, you're doing okay.
So with that, as far as the pandemic, I remember looking at a graphic this past week, and it said that I believe the 1819 year or the 1920 school year was the last normal school year that we encountered. It may have been the 1819. Before that, many of us in the Houston area, we had Harvey. And then we had the bounce back from Harvey. Then you had the beginning of a pandemic, then a full school year in a pandemic. And now we're trying to move out of the pandemic. So our kids have struggled. Many students, and we're seeing this in the data, we have freshmen who the last time they were actually on a campus or in school, they were seventh graders. And so it's interesting. You can kind of tell with their behavior that the last time they were in an organized school setting, they were seventh grade. It's just like, okay, we have to accelerate this and get you up to the level where we need. We're all trying to figure this out because we are truly in a new reality. Parents are frustrated, educators are frustrated, district leaders are frustrated, and it's never helped when you have state officials, whether elected or appointed, constantly changing the rules and moving the goal lines back. And so trying to find the best resources out there, what you found, and I've seen in the past year, there has been a plethora of tutoring programs, educational consultants that have popped on the market. I've seen a lot of teachers who have actually left the field and started their own educational ventures to work with small groups. And so I'd always advocate for finding some of those qualified individuals that are in the local area. Some teachers are fed up. And so I don't want to do it in this setting anymore. I've been in places and I've seen people in places where that educational system, district or school, doesn't reach the students that they want to focus on anymore. And sometimes you have to leave the system to be able to really reach the students that you want to focus on. And so when we look at this entire pandemic, we're all trying to figure this out together. We see the gaps and they're glaring in many areas. And for us at the high school level, they missed 8th grade. They've missed half of their 7th grade. Well, they've missed these tests, and now we're trying to ask them to perform at this higher level. And so it's caused us to have to take a step back to reassess. We're doing a lot of beginning of the year interim assessments. Um, some of the data we're impressed with, some of it we're struggling together, um, because we're now starting to see what the students, what they don't know. And so it's important for parents to encourage their students to go to school, perform as best as they can on these interim assessments, because that will allow us to then tier and break them down into the right intervention groups. We have something to where, depending on how you performed on the test, we will put you in these lift groups. If you know the state tests, if you pass it, you fall under approaches. If you do a little bit better, it falls under the meets. And if you do the best, it falls under the masters. So it's failure, approaches, meets, and masters. Well, if you are 1 to 2 questions away from failing in approaches, we're going to put you in this lift group, and we're going to look at where we can provide the most assistance to you to get you over that hump by the next time you take that test. And we have lift groups at each level, but sometimes there's a struggle for the schools if students look at it as, man, this is just another test. Right. And our kids are burnt out with just another test.
That is true.
Our teachers are burnt out at administering just another test. Administrators are burnt out.
Get rid of it.
Exactly. So it's a lot.
So let me ask you this: with our last, I guess, almost 15 minutes that we have on the show, I'd like to get, or I guess, put the cards on the table. What do we, and we talked about some of this a little bit earlier today, in order to change the narrative for our young Black men and make excellence in academic achievement the norm, as opposed to the exception? What do we do to groom them and develop them as a standard of being intellectual leaders, and independent thinkers? We talked about this, Jimmy, earlier this week, not following the crowd, not following what's cool, unless being cool is being a high achiever intellectually and academically. What can we do to change and turn the corner on our young Black men not being in the statistic as the least likely to graduate from high school, following significantly behind their gender peers, that is Black women, in terms of matriculating through high school and getting through to bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees? What does it take for us to lift our young Black men? Because there are a lot of extremely high achieving young Black men, but quite frankly, their achievement in too many cases falls on deaf ears. It's not celebrated. And so, the rest of them, I cringe when I hear parents saying, as long as they pass and it's okay.
Right.
How do we fix this problem?
Our kids will be what they see. Our kids will be what they see. And I'm saying that we have to model for our students, our young Black boys, what we expect. I remember going to school with the folks that had the hoop dreams, the ones that wanted to be a rapper. Some of them played a little basketball. Some of them played football. Some of them made a song or two, a track. But a lot of them didn't. And so how can it be cool? For me, I had friends that wanted to go to school and do all these things. And I said, I want to be a teacher. And people, Brian, you're a teacher? Yes, I am. Brian, you're an administrator? Yes, you're. Brian, dude, you are a principal. I'm proud of you. Well, thank you. Man, we always knew this is what you would end up doing. Y'all didn't act like it. It's kind of crazy. And I didn't act like it either. But I love this journey. And when I'm speaking with the young men on my campus, this goes back to that cool piece. Mm-hmm. I had a young man, a young Black student athlete that came up to me one day and he said, "We've never had a principal like you." And I was like, well, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. He said, no, like you truly care about us. You're truly one of us. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, we've never seen a principal that wore some joggers and some Yeezys. And I'm like, huh? He said, and I looked down and I had on the Yeezys, the shoes that the kids like, and some joggers because we were doing some activity. They're like, we've never had a principal that dressed like that. And I paid attention because we take a lot of pictures on the campus. That Monday, I was suited and booted. I was suited and booted that Monday. The next day, I had on this black sweatshirt for the soccer team with some black joggers and some Yeezys, and I saw two students in the hallway. We were dressed exactly the same. One was a female, one was a male student. I said, we got to get a picture together. And we took the picture, and it was profound. Mr. Robertson, I like that style. Everybody need a principal that can do both, that can wear the suit and then can dress it down. And it dawned on me, my kids don't treat me any different based on what I have on. They know I'm the principal. They know that I lead that campus. One day I'm dressed a way that they can relate to. Another day I'm dressed in the way that they look up to, but they treat me the same. And as a school, and just as a man in general, I do that for them. Son, pull up your mask and your pants. Tie this, do that. What's up here doesn't matter what we see out here. And I think sometimes we focus a lot on the exterior piece. For a lot of KIPP schools and charter schools, you see uniforms. When I got there, we are in the middle of a pandemic. I said, I want to keep y'all alive more than tuck in this polo shirt. Because we also start to see some systems of white supremacy that are embedded in schools into certain systems to stand in a straight line and be quiet and cover your mouth. And we're not going to do it. We're going to move expeditiously. But we relax some things. And my students told me last year, it used to feel like a prison. Now it's cool. And I'm like, what is cool? It's like y'all treat us with respect. Like no adult is coming at us sideways as if I'm the adult and you must mind me. It's say, man, where are you supposed to be? I mean, well, get that for me. Why don't you do it for me? So it's those positive relationships that we're building for our students that are key. Our kids now want to go to class. Our kids now want to excel because they don't want to let us down. We built the relationships on our campus. Now our kids don't want, oh, you're gonna do that to me. You're making me look bad. You know my boss is right here. And I got you, Mr. Robertson. We built those relationships on our campus. Another thing, Tom, you know this, I shared that when you look at the statistics, it shows that 2% of black males are in schools. It's only 2%, the national average. Wow. Schools only have 2% of black men.
Okay.
But on my campus, it's over 25%.
Oh, okay. You're talking about black men as teachers and administrators.
As teachers and administrators. And so on my campus, 1 out of every 4 classes that you will go to, you will have a black male leading that class. And we're not talking about just the coaches. We're not just talking about social studies, but AP, English language, AP literature, AP world history, AP psychology, music, band, art, algebra 1. Our core content are led by black men. And so when our black boys are going into a classroom, it's easy to be cool and smart when the person that's leading you and teaching you is another black man. And so we've seen how our kids have rise to the occasion time and time again, because if I'm at the front of the classroom, I'm telling you, don't let me down. We are in this together. Don't let me down, because I'm not going to let you down. And so it's power in kids seeing what success looks like. And so our kids must see what success looks like, have it modeled, and then they will soon duplicate it. Many of our kids, they don't have that positive model. Growing up, I didn't always have the positive males around me. And it didn't matter what color you were. The reason I wanted to be an administrator was because of a 55-year-old white man at that time, Mr. Connors, my middle school administrator. He's now, I think, 72, just had a birthday a couple weeks ago. But he's the reason that I'm doing this work. So it didn't matter the color. It mattered that I had a positive male role model that kept me out of trouble, that gave me a little bit of wisdom, that righted my ship at the times that I needed. Many of our...
Go ahead. So let me ask you this. So some of the things I've read about charter schools show that charter schools outperform public schools in many areas. And so that makes me wonder in places like New York, where the city government there and the teachers union are working really hard to get rid of the charter schools, when the charter schools are doing a better job at educating our kids than the public schools. Um, One, what can we do to bring more awareness to the fact that we need more charter schools like yours and more people like and programs like what you're doing to educate our kids? Because I've heard it all over the years that we don't have enough black students, not enough this, not enough that. But you guys seem to have some answers. I'm not saying you have all the answers, but it seems like you have some and a little more freedom to deviate from the master plan that's pushed down to you when it comes to educating your kids, and you have the success and the record to show that some of the things you're doing is working. So we need to take what works for educating our kids and get behind that. So what can we do to push to get more charter school? If the public schools are not going to educate our kids, fine. Let's pull them out. Let's put them in charter schools that have a goal and a run like the one that you run.
And so for charter schools, let's say for my campus, we're an AP for all. All students will take a minimum of 6 advanced placement courses.
Thank you.
Even
Very good.
students who are emergent bilinguals, even students who fall under special education services, and they don't get the supports that they need to be successful in those classrooms. All students will take these AP courses on our campus, and we're teaching at a much more rigorous level on our campus. And so we found some success there. What I've noticed, like I said, I worked in 4 traditional school districts prior to coming over to my charter network. And what I've found since being here is the freedom, is the autonomy for me to lead my campus my way.
Right.
Working in traditional districts, it's a little bit tighter. We're not able to do some of these things. Everyone has a boss and a boss and a boss, and the red tape is there. And so we need those educational systems to loosen up, to be more innovative, to
Brother Robinson, we know that's not going to happen anytime
and,
soon.
and that's the struggle.
So we need to
That's
get
why
on with Plan B, which is getting more charter schools like yours to fill the our needs, educational needs for our kids. So what can we do to advance and to get more charter schools in black areas, inner cities, for those kids who are being underserved right now?
I believe it's really just pushing, advocating, going to the charter boards. Even a charter, we have a board of trustees,
Okay.
but really advocating, seeing where is the need. And if it's a need, is it because the public school, the traditional district public school that's in place is not serving you? If it are not equipping kids to move on and matriculate at the levels that we need or expect, then we're going to those boards and we're going to ask, I need this school that's going to provide these learning experiences, this high quality learning experiences to our students in this particular neighborhood. And I want it now. I know in the Dallas area with KIPP, we have one high school.
Okay.
If we have parents, and it's over in Oak Cliff, KIPP Oak Cliff, if we know that we want more across the city of Dallas and North Dallas, and it's so many parts of Dallas these days, then we just need to push and show why these students are not being served and how this entity would provide the educational resources and tools to better equip our kids in these particular areas. And if we can't get that, we got to push to public schools. We have to go in, and sometimes talking to the principal is one thing. We got to go above the principals in those traditional districts. For me, I can make many decisions as it relates to the choices and outcomes on my campus. In other places, I got to talk to a few more people. I have to wait till the board comes and convenes on this. Some people go back and forth about the charter or don't like the way the charter does it because they're taking our money. You're getting the property taxes. I don't believe we're getting the property taxes, even though we're sitting right here. So our funding model is different, but I don't care about money. I care about what we're doing for our kids. And whether I got $1 or $1 million, am I going to spend that money to do right by the kids and give them the educational advancement that they deserve.
So, Tom, I think you had a question. I think we had time for
Right.
one more before we need to
Exactly.
close
So,
out.
so as we close out, and again, we started this show under the premise of how to develop young black men for excellence,
Right.
independence, and obviously, success in life, empowerment, that being. And so we've tagged a couple of things for our listening audience today. Obviously, putting them in the right environment so they get the early learning development for high achievement, and then obviously the results on that dividends to years as they get through junior high, high school, and college. Obviously, having a strong male role model that you spoke to, Brother Robertson, in terms of what inspired you to become a school administrator. Our kids are typically very competitive, but being able to somehow put that realm of competitiveness, in the areas of academic achievement, that's obviously one thing. I know, Jimmy, if your thing is bring the belt back.
Turn the TV off, take away the cell phone, and bring the belt back. Yes.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I say is turn the TV off, turn the mass media off, get them in front of a book, get them in front of something that's going to develop them and strengthen them intellectually, as opposed to dumbing them down through mass media, because I believe there's a very high correlation in terms of achievement and how much time they're sitting in front of the television or listening to the radio. Brother Robertson, any other things that you would say to young people now, or their parents or stakeholders in their lives, in order to drive more of our young men to the standard of high academic and professional achievement?
Talk to them. Talk to them. We have a lot of young men and young women that don't feel heard, that don't feel seen at times. I think with the normal hustle and bustle, it's easy for me to give my son this phone and say, go sit over there and keep yourself occupied in the house, because it's safer in the house. But what's inside of this device isn't always safe.
Right.
The things that are coming into their minds because of what came across the screen, it's not always safe. So it's important for us to start having those early conversations with our students about expectations, about what we want to see. Every day I come home, son, how was school? Good. What did you learn today? We learned about numbers, and we learned this in Spanish, and all that. Use it. As we say, we don't know what we don't show. And so I want my son to show me what he learned today, and show, man, that's cool. So what are y'all going to learn tomorrow? Or where are y'all going to take that? Why is this important? We used to always say after 7th grade, that math class, when am I ever going to use that? But it's so important for our parents to continue to talk and learn what's going on in the school. Sometimes we'll see that students are struggling much more quickly if we understand what their needs are and what's going on, because many times they'll say nothing until it's too late. It's kind of like the seniors that we had this past year. It was April before they woke up and got serious, and they had to work hard, and we had to work hard with them, but 100% of our seniors graduated on June the 20th, and I'm proud of that. But the road doesn't have to be so hard or as difficult if we have those early conversations. We see what young people need. We get them the right resources. You'd be surprised with how many students who may be dyslexic and it was never caught or identified, or they never went through the testing process, or how many students that can't even see. And parents never knew to go and get a simple eye test. Kids standing there squinting, but never said, Mama, I can't see. Can I go and get some glasses? And so it's a lot of things that you'll find out with really just communicating, ensuring that students are around the right individuals, whether same age peers or adults. You'd be surprised with some of the stories that we hear about individuals that are in the lives of young people that have different effects, positive and negative effects on them. I never knew that students had as much trauma or sustained as much trauma as I found out over the last 2 or 3 years. And it's challenging to sit down and hear, but our kids, they have a story to tell, and it's a lot of things that may have gone on or is currently going on that as parents we are not aware of. And so, I, talk to our kids. Talk to our
Thank you.
kids. I
Good
think
point.
that's the most
Um,
important.
and as we do on this show, we always close out with a prayer, and we get our resident preacher man here, Mr. Tommy Duncan, to close us out. So, Tom, do what you do best.
All right. Dear gracious Father, we come before you this evening, thanking you for bringing us back together again. Hopefully sharing information, insight, and or wisdom that could be of consequence, that could be of significance, that may open a door for someone out there who is listening now, who may be listening later. We thank you for bringing Brother Robeson to us today. We thank you for the investment that he is making into the next generation of young people. We thank you for what he has done up until this point. We ask that you would continue to put your cloak of protection around Brother Robeson, that you would continue to inspire him to do the great work that he has for our young people. Father, we ask that there's something that he may have said today that may make a difference in a young person's life, or even an adult's life, or even a parent's life right now, Father. And Father, we ask that you continue to inspire us and motivate us to bring great talent, great information, so that our users may be served in the way that you see it best fit, that we may do your will on earth, in this platform, and on this show. And in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay.
Man.
And we'll be back next week, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central Time. And I believe the topic for that one is going to be closing the wealth gap. So
Oh, wow.
you want to tune in and get some valuable information as we continue to fight this battle. And we're not going to stop until we reach that promised land. So let's all try to get there together.
Good night, everyone.